Never before has there been such a gathering of gospel music greats. It was the idea of Jack Pittman to have all the old-timers attending the Grand Ole Gospel Reunion together for lunch and tell some of the funny happenings of their career. Therefore, you're about to view the original, the first of its kind, gospel music celebrity comedy video. We hope you enjoy X-Rayed Gospel.
He said, tell me, do these gospel singers, what kind of percentage of them that really live for the Lord? I said, well, about the same percentage as preachers.
When I was at the Blue Ridge Quartet, nearly every morning in Spartanburg, starting back in 1957, Jack had come by and we'd have coffee together, and a little old hole in the wall we called an office back then. But I was thinking, when I was at the Blue Ridge Quartet, Kenny and Bill Crow, Elmo Fagg, Ed Sprouse, and myself, we were in Pontiac, Michigan one night, and we was in the White Castle eating, and the snow was about hubcap deep on a Ferris wheel. I mean, it was snowing and cold, and White Castle is our kind of place back in them days. And so we went in, sitting at these little stools, and this drunk come in. And when he come to the door, he come through like this, you know, and he sat down at the bar and he crossed his arms. He was so polite. The lady come by and he said, let me have a glass of water to go. So she sent him a glass of water, and he took it, went out. We figured he was using it for a chaser. So in a few minutes, he come back in, set that empty glass down, so polite, waited until she come back, and he said, let me have another glass of water to go. Went out and come back in again, set that water down, and that lady said, what are you doing with all that water? You using that for a chaser that quick? He said, no, said the back seat of my car is on fire. Every time he'd pour it on, he'd sit there and watch it, and it'd start smoldering again, you know. He couldn't get it out, you know. But it's a joy to be here. You know, if I tell anything funny, it's probably not going to be original. It's something I've seen. But there's a guy here that I want to bring up to you right now that I know all of you love, and I believe I'm glad to see all of you, and you know that. But I believe I'd have walked down here just to hear this guy and see him. One of the most original people to ever come along in our field, probably the funniest man to ever come along as far as being original goes. And I'm sure you all know him and you all love him. And would you welcome to the podium Mr. David Reece? Yes, sir.
How you doing, Brother Epperson? Glad to be here. Want you to be sure to listen to our radio program every Sunday morning at 4:35. We're on for 5 minutes. We got two personal service announcement in there. We don't have a sponsor yet. We've been on for 35 years, but we're hoping to get one next week. Well, let's see. I thought I might tell a story about the old Rangers. No, I guess I better not tell that. Well, I'll tell one about the Rangers trio then. No, I better not tell that either. My mind goes back to the old days. Old Arnold Howes, most of y'all know him and knew him. And, you know, the Lord didn't bless him with good looks. Poor fella, he was ugly. He was so ugly, when he was a baby, they had to tie a pork chop around his neck before the dogs would play with him. But he knew he was, and people would laugh at him. But we were in Dothan, Alabama one morning, and Vernon Howes and Denver Crumpler and I were sitting in a booth over there, and we saw Arnold come walking in on the other side of the restaurant, and he sat down by himself in a booth over there. He didn't see us. So we told the waitress, said, look, when you go over there to wait on that man, you better watch it, because he had a fit out on the street a while ago. And he looked like the one that would have one, you know. So she'd go over, we'd watch it go on, you know. She went over there, and she'd stand back about 3 or 4 feet from him while she's taking his order, you know. So finally, she brought his food over there to him, and she said, set it down, and sort of jumped back. And Arnold, he was getting annoyed at this, you know. We were just knocking ourselves out. So later on, we checked out of the hotel and got in the car. Arnold said, last blankety-blanket time I'm ever going in there. Why, Arnold? Oh, they were rude to me. They'd act like it's crazy, act like they're scared to death of me. He had no idea we'd put this up to them, you know. But I can't tell you, there's so many I can't tell you. But I will tell you this, now you might want to bleep out a little part of this. Me and my brothers, about twice a year, we go fishing out from Morehead City, North Carolina, deep sea fishing. Well, here about a year ago, we were over there, and we had to leave early in the morning, so we had sandwiches and Cokes and everything in our cooler. I went out to get some ice. So I was sitting out there dumping ice, and then this lady from the motel come running out there and says, hey, get away from me. You can't put ice in your chest there. This is strictly for the guests in the motel. You can't do that. Yap, you know. I said, she said, oh.
I think the worst trick I ever heard pulled on anybody, though, the Oaks pulled on little Troy one time. They were leaving to go on tour, and little Troy was going to ride with them. So they got started going to California someplace, and so little Troy was up in the front, and little Willie was there, and little Willie said, Troy, said, I found out what you've been doing. Troy said, what? Said, little Willie said, you've been running around with my wife while I'm out of town. Troy, no, Willie, yes, don't try to deny it. Said, I know, I've got to prove. And little Willie pulled out a pistol loaded with blanks, just started shooting little Troy. And he tried to get under the bus seats and everything else, trying to get away, but one of the poor guy had a heart attack.
You know, down in Winter Haven, Florida, that's where I've been for, 25, not that long. Yeah, 23 years. And, all right. Down there, everybody knows me. You know, everywhere I go, Wally Varner, everywhere I go. And my wife, she kind of takes a certain amount of pride, you know, and everybody knows Wally. I'm not going to tell her up here, nobody knows me. I'm telling you, everybody I've met said, remind me, you know. But anyway, I have a little story for you. Now, this is not one that I did myself or doesn't involve me. As a matter of fact, one of our dearest friends have gone on to be with the Lord, and Big Chief Weatherington is one of the most amusing things that happened in my experiences. We were traveling one night in 2 cars, and it's about 1 o'clock in the morning or so, and a little country road split, you know, and went 2 directions, and Chief was driving the front car, and I was driving the rear car, and he got to the forks in the road. And when he got there, he didn't know which way to go, and he drove pretty fast, about 75, you know, and when he got there, he didn't know which way to go. He wound up in the loose rock in between the 2 roads, and he spun around about 3 or 4 times, wound up over at the gas pump at the little service station and said, fill her up.